Well, in the news this week, there was a lot of emotion and there's a lot of anger from some people around the Democratic Party's representative of Michigan, or one of them, Rashida Tlaib. And Rashida Tlaib happens to be one of the only representatives in Congress that is of Palestinian ethnicity.
Yeah, she's the only one.
Yep. So Rashida Tlaib is known for, of course, her support of the Palestinian people, and she has flown a Palestinian flag, outside of her office for years now. As a matter of fact, there was, some news where there was, I can't remember her name, but there was another congresswoman that said that she would fly Israel's flag in opposition to lead flying Palestine's flag.
Mm-hmm.
But what we saw come out in the news this week was more of a bombshell, and it goes into what we've talked about before with Cynthia McKinney. Remember when Cynthia McKinney told us that AIPAC joined against her to stop her from becoming reelected in her elections in Georgia? She was a representative in Georgia, where she
Right.
had much a guaranteed win based off of her track record and based off of her community support. But the financing from AIPAC allowed them to guarantee that she would not win. So we look at the situation that came out this week, where candidates came out and actually stated that they were approached by AIPAC and offered $20 million to drop their current bids and run against Rashida Tlaib so that she wouldn't get reelected. And when we talk about things like election interference, that's been a big topic over the past 4 years, going back to Donald Trump and his cries about election interference. And we often hear Donald Trump talk about the black judges, talk about the other people who were involved in Georgia, in Pennsylvania, as being election riggers. He in fact created a term, as we talked about in the past on this show, called riggers, which ironically rhymes with the N word. But we never hear Donald Trump speak about the influence of the election from organizations like AIPAC. And we've heard other political people in politics, specifically Cynthia McKinney, tell us about how AIPAC has approached her and asked her to sign a pledge
Mm-hmm.
of support for Israel.
Right.
He said this is something that if you're in politics, you pretty much are requested to do, because that is the only way that you will receive the financial support from the big donors from AIPAC. So when it comes to election interference and influence, AIPAC is a big player. And as we can see here, two uh, senators or candidates who are running for senators, running for the open U.S. Senate seat, will offer $20 million to drop their campaign and instead run against Detroit Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. Now, $20 million will make a whole lot of people change their priorities.
Mm.
And that $20 million would have been personal money, right? That would go to their campaign, that would be used to run against Tlaib, to pretty much put her out of that seat, which shows you that they don't want any opposition. They don't want any opposition to the current stated agenda. And that current stated agenda is always connected to a infinite support of Israel. So we have one person who has a different viewpoint based upon them being Palestinian. And when that person shows everyone that they're not willing to sell their people out, they want that person instantaneously removed. There was no outcry when Antony Blinken went to Israel and gave a speech about being Secretary of State. And the first thing that came out of his mouth is that I come here as a U.S. representative, Secretary of State, but I also come here as a Jew. Mm-hmm. So where's the biasness in that? Why should Rashida Tlaib be penalized for her support of her ethnicity and her people, but we don't hear any outcry about a elected U.S. official or an appointed U.S. official, I should say, by the president, the Secretary of State, putting his religion, because essentially it's not a race, putting his religion in front of his duty to the country or his duty to uphold his position.
Right. Well, the first thing I'd like to do is give Hill Harper, who is an actor that's running for the open Senate seat there in Michigan, and the Nasser, Bedouin Nasser, who's also competing for the open Senate seat. I think the Michigan, the Democrat senator from Michigan is retiring, and so the Senate seat is open. And apparently two individuals, I'm not sure if it was the same individual or if they were different individuals, approached Hill Harper and Mr. Nasser and offered them $20 million to drop out of their race for the U.S. Senate to run against Rashida Tlaib, because she's an outspoken critic of the Zionist state, and particularly of the current far right, you could say Nazi government that's led by Benjamin Netanyahu. So I give them credit for resisting the temptation. You know, these Zionist pimps are seeking political prostitutes who will serve them, on their knees in order to continue to give this enormous support that the United States is providing to the Zionist state. So it makes me wonder, because Wesley Bell, who is the prosecuting attorney in St. Louis County, the people in the St. Louis County elected Bell when the former prosecutor, whose name escapes me at the moment, McDonough or Dunham, I can't remember his name now, but he was the guy who refused to prosecute the guy Darren, what was his name, that killed the young man in Ferguson. These names are slipping out of my mind all of a sudden.
I think it was Darren.
Ferguson. Pardon?
Was it Darren Wilson, I believe?
Yeah, Darren Wilson, right, who killed Michael, what was his last name? Almost. Brown. Yeah, Michael Brown Jr. in Ferguson. And so they elected this black guy, Wesley Bell, to replace this guy that wouldn't prosecute Darren Wilson. Bell decided that he was going to run for the Senate seat in Missouri. Suddenly, he dropped out of the Senate race to run against Cori Bush. Cori Bush, of course, is another critic of the Zionist state. She sponsored a resolution in the House of Representatives calling for the United States government to push for a ceasefire, in the war in Gaza. So I'm wondering now, how much was Wesley Bell paid? Was he paid $20 million or some amount of money to drop out of the Senate race to run against Cori Bush? And now we see the same thing, the same tactics being tried to run against Rashida Tlaib. Now, of course, Rashida Tlaib was one of the 5 candidates in the 2022 midterms that AIPAC hired attorney Bakari Sellers, whose father, Cleveland Sellers, was very influential in raising my political consciousness and my development. Cleve having joined the SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, in 1962 when he went to Howard University. And of course, he was arrested for when the police killed 3 black students at South Carolina State in February of 1968. He was arrested and charged. The police killed 3 black students, and Cleve was there helping to organize demonstrations, and he got arrested. So his son is a pro-Zionist, which children are going to do what children are going to do. Anyway, they hired Bakari to help organize candidates to run against Rashida Tlaib and several others, and maybe Ocasio-Cortez, maybe Cori Bush. I can't remember the other candidates, but I do specifically remember the effort in 2022. And of course, this was, as Brother Amos said, was tried successfully against Cynthia McKinney. She recovered and actually won her seat back, and then was ousted again. For a number of reasons. Not alone her refusal to sign this pledge to the Zionist state. I mean, what other country in the world does this? Is anybody signing a pledge, to Ghana, to the Philippines, or to Italy, or to Mexico, to Vietnam? I mean, what other country in the world goes to a democratically elected representative in the United States and asks them to sign a pledge to support this country, which means, okay, so you sign the pledge, obviously you get campaign donations and other things, but then you're saying that you will simply sacrifice truth on the altar of self-interest when those countries began to, engage in crimes against humanity that we're seeing taking place in Gaza and also in the West Bank. They just killed an 8-year-old child yesterday. So this is basically what's going on. I mean, it's quite amazing the amount of influence these people have. But what it also says is that that these organizations like AIPAC, the American Israel Political Action Committee, these are some of the most anti-democracy forces in this country. But they never received that kind of criticism. And like you said, these 2 individuals obviously are trying to rig this election, but they're not being called riggers or anything else but by Donald Trump or anybody. And the bigger question is because this is against the law, and Michigan has a Democratic governor, and Secretary of State for sure, probably Attorney General. Will these people face any charges? Because what they have done is a violation of campaign finance laws. So that's the question. I mean, will they call in Harper and Mr. Nasser and ask them to identify the person who approached them. Now, one of the guy that approached Hill Harper has been identified, and AIPAC very quickly said, well, he donated to us at one time, but he's not one of our current donors. But this is the game. The game is it's not about the ability to run in a free and fair election and be elected by your people, which Rashida Tlaib has been repeatedly elected by her community. I think she serves in the area of Dearborn, Michigan, and they don't want democracy. They want control. They want people. See, this is the problem, in my opinion, with American democracy, and one of the reasons why Omawale Malcolm X called it a disguised hypocrisy. People think just because you have the right to vote, at least those people who do have the right to vote, or who are not allowed to vote, or whose votes are stolen or denied or whatever. People think, well, I can go vote for a candidate. That makes this country a democracy. No, it doesn't. Not when oligarchs, not when plutocrats can influence how the candidate that you voted for enacts public policy. See, because influencing public policy is the most critical element of American politics. It's not voting. It's not voting. And people think, okay, well, I can vote. I can vote for somebody, and that means this. No, it doesn't. Not when that person can be bought by special interests and who will actually vote against the things that serve the interests of the people in their community. Just like all of the Democrats and the Republicans who voted to send $113 billion to Ukraine, which is clear now that Ukraine is losing the war. It was clear from the beginning that they would lose it. But that's $113 billion flushed down the toilet. When they're cutting programs, like child care, the child care tax credits, the additional funding that was allowing 2 to 3 million children to be taken care of in daycare, all that money is cut. So you have these politicians who are voting against your interests, but you have a few politicians like Congresswoman Tlaib and Cori Bush and just a handful of others who go against the establishment. They went against Nancy Pelosi, and now they're going against the neo-colonial puppet Hakeem Jeffries by standing up for truth and justice. But that doesn't work in this oligarchy. So I'm glad that these two gentlemen, Mr. Harper and Mr. Nasser, came forward and exposed this corruption. But the question now is, what will the Attorney General in Michigan do about it? That becomes the question.
Well, you could pretty much guarantee that they're not going to do anything about it, because this is how they operate. They'll either probably be paid off, or the prosecutors, someone down the line will be paid off so that this can continue to happen under the table.